In the previous video, we talked about how sometimes we have operations that we do not want to block the main thread of execution, and we discussed callbacks as one way of handling it. We're going to look at promises, which are a newer way of handling that in JavaScript. So promises are a special kind of object. They're a specific type of object that has these three states associated with it. You first create a promise and it is pending before it has completed. So up until it has finished doing its work, it's in the pending state. That just means not done. After that, if it finished successfully, it'll be fulfilled. And if it did not, if it failed, had some kind of exception or whatever, it's in the rejected state. Rejected just means failed. When we want to use the result of this promise, we have the .then function here. So this .then function is sort of like what we would have put in the event handler before. If we wanted to handle what we're looking at now with an event handler, we would have had to do something like this. Plug in an event handler for result, arrow, console.log, and since this is one line, we don't need a return. It's just a little JavaScript shortcut. Also don't need a semicolon. We would plug that in as our arrow function. This time we're still using an arrow function, but we're going to use the .then to consume this promise result. So I'm going to give this a run. Actually, I have this already set up over here. But let's look at the order that things execute. I'm going to run it. Okay, this is just the definition, so not running it here. We haven't called it yet. Now we're going to call it. So pop into long running operation. We step into this function, and importantly, what it's returning is a promise object. It's not returning the result. So eventually, this is going to return a string. That's the end result. It's going to return this string here. Operation completed successfully. This resolve is kind of like the return statement for a promise, but it's not going to do that for 1,000 milliseconds, so 1 second. So it's going to take a moment to do that. What we're getting back, as I've noted here, is a promise. This is the promise that it's actually returning. It's not the result. So it's not the string operation completed successfully. All right, so we pop down. We've told it what to do when it has finally completed. So once you do complete, this is what we want, but it hasn't yet because it's still kind of sitting here waiting for a second. So go ahead and do some other work. Now we finally go up and this 1 second has completed. So it's finished its work. It's going to resolve and return this. And we're going to see it finally pop back into the then handler. So this has kind of been waiting for it to resolve. Now that it's resolved, it's going to jump down in here and console log the result. Okay, so just like before, we got this printed first. And then once our promise fulfilled, we got operation completed successfully. A lot of times it's simpler to just chain these together. All this is showing is we could have written it this way. Let's just update it. You don't actually have to create a promise and then wait on it. We can just tag the .then directly on the end of it. So when you have one function that returns a value, we can operate on that value directly by using a dot after it. Okay, I'm not going to show this. I will show the next example though, where we're just going to chain several operations together. So we've got a slow add function. All it's going to do is add 1 to whatever number we gave it and return the result. So it's an add 1 function, slowly add 1 to whatever number we gave it. We're going to start off by giving it 1. So call my slow add function. Don't be thrown off by these being on their own line. That's just how the formatter is saving it. After this has completed, after this promise has resolved, take the result, which in this case, if I had 1, I added 1 to it, this result will be 2. Oops, let's go 2, not 3. And console.log first addition, and then this is going to be 2. These numbers are all wrong. Let me fix these. 3 and 4. So after the first then handler, instead of quitting, we're going to return another promise. So call slow add again, this time pass in the result that we got back from the first slow add. So this was 2. Call slow add again, and the return value for this is another promise. Whenever I have a promise, I can call .then on it. And in fact, I need to call .then on it. I can't do anything useful without waiting for it to complete. That's going to get the result of this add back, which was 2 plus 1. This will be 3. Then we'll call slow add again. We will pass 3 in as the number. When that finishes, we will get back 3 plus 1, which is 4. So again, what returned here was not the result. We didn't return 4. What we returned was the promise itself. Oops, the promise itself. So we call .then on the return value, and here's the result that it's giving us back. So in each of these cases, this result that we're seeing in the arrow function is what is coming in from this resolve. This is what's feeding those results. Finally, this .catch error. If I were to throw an exception in here, we would hit that error block. So it's kind of like wrapping the whole thing in a try catch. I don't know what's going on with my environment here. Okay, so we should hit our error block down here if I were to throw this, but I'm not going to run it. Let's just go ahead and let it go. Okay, so we can see that 1 second after another, we're getting our results in. And again, if we had more work down here, we could continue to run that code, and this code would run while it was waiting for these to complete. So I mentioned before, let's look at this really common mistake, trying to access the result before the promise is fulfilled. This just gets at that idea that I've been hammering on, which is that this returns not the value, this returns a promise object. So if I actually run this and say my result is slow add 1, we're going to see that this result isn't what we think it is. In fact, I can hover over it here, and my IntelliSense and VS Code tells me this is a promise that I'm looking at. So let's see what actually prints. Promise, and the promise state was pending. So when we hit line 12, this was still running because it took a second to complete. The way we access it is using this .then. At least that's one way of accessing it. We're going to look in the next section at another way that's nice and easy to read.